So I come at this, by the way, I'm on mic 1, so there we go. I come at this as an educator who is Jewish, not so much as a Jewish educator. SLA is a secular school, but the ethos and what I bring to what I believe about education is deeply rooted in my history, despite my first name, thank you Mom and Dad, in the Jewish tradition. It was 1971, my parents were hippies, what are you going to do? I'm here to tell you this, which is, for too many kids in this country, this statement is true. High school stinks. Kids all over this country view high school as something to get through, something to survive, something to endure. And that's a shame. And why is that? High school stinks because the technology never works. There we go. All right, high school stinks more often than not because what do we tell kids? Do what you're told to do. Over and over and over again. Just out of curiosity, how many people in this room have gone back to high school after they graduated and tried to sit through a high school day? One hand goes up. What'd you think? Yeah. Exactly. How did I survive, right? I mean, you sit there. I did it recently. I went to a wonderful high school in Philadelphia that has very well regarded, and tried to sit through their 9-period day. By the end of the day, not only could I not remember what the stuff I'd learned the first period, I couldn't remember what class it was. And the other big problem is this about the stuff we teach kids is it's stuff that we give no relevance to why they may ever actually need to know it. And to prove this point, I took this slide from the state ed website. This is a question from last year's PSSA exam. How many of you in the room have had to do a box and whisker plot in the last year? 3 hands. I'm willing to bet you could have learned it when you needed it. But instead, we tell every single kid, learn this or else. Learn this or you will be labeled failing. Learn this for no apparent reason, by the way, but you're going to get tested on it. And that leads to the powerful question that children have asked for generations, which is, why do I need to know it? By the way, it's worse than you realize now in schools, especially in our public schools. In our public schools, what we do is this. We give children a pretest. Then we find out what they're worst in. And then we give them more of that. As if teaching to joy, teaching to passion, teaching to interest does not matter. The only thing that matters in our schools today is making sure that you don't stink quite so much at the stuff you're bad at. I ask you, how many of you had a joy of learning sparked by being told, you stink at this, do more? So we have to do better. Right? Here's the problem. We've all had that moment in school. I'm sure my wife loves to tell this story. My wife grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia, and her physics teacher became ill her senior year of high school, probably driven crazy by my wife and her friends. And they got a local engineer to come teach. And one day my wife raised her hand and said, you know, Mr. Smith, why do I have to know this? And he went through the usual battery of, well, you know, you're going to need this, it's going to be on the test, you know, it'll help you get a job, it looks good on a college resume, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, to which all of her answers were, nope, I'm going to Tufts University, they don't have mandatory classes, I'm already accepted, I don't need this, da-da-da-da-da-da. Finally, he gave up on her, turned to the person sitting next to her and said, how about you, Bobby, what do you plan to do with your life? He says, I want to build boats, sir. She goes, well, you need this, and completely ignored my wife. Now, one, I will admit, she's a bit of a wisecracker, so I can understand ignoring her. But the sad thing is what they should have told her years ago is that there is, for an English major, there is as much poetry as a ball in flight as there is in the written word. And that to understand physics is to understand the language of the physical world. And the practical application, as well as the sheer beauty of it, is worth learning. But instead, we give them all of these answers, and usually the answer really is, someone told me I had to teach this. What I will tell you is it doesn't have to be that way. We can teach to joy. We can teach to passion. We can teach to interest. School should not just be about a series of required courses, but school should teach us how to learn. If nothing else, school should teach us how to learn. How many of you today, currently, are on a device that didn't exist 5 years ago? Right now. Most of the room. Most of you probably didn't read the manual and sit there and go, okay, the way I can, okay, some of you might have. But most of us just have learned how to learn. And so we figure it out. Alvin Toffler says that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Schools should teach us how to learn. School has to be about more than this, and of course, to a room full of Jewish educators, this makes sense, but as an educator who is Jewish in the secular world, this is a powerful idea. School should help us learn to live. This project that you see up here is a Spanish 4 project. What the kids had to do is they had to write essays about who they were, both inside, both the things that you could see outwardly, I am short, I am tall, I have brown hair, what have you, and the things that were inside of them. Then, because in the Latin American culture, the idea of the mask is such a powerful cultural idea, they had to design a papier-mâché mask that was a representation of who they were. And then they literally used the words themselves to decorate the mask. They learned so much more than how to conjugate a verb in that project. They learned so much more about the idea of another culture. They learned about themselves. And they learned how to project an identity onto the world. We can do that more often. At the root of this, to me, is a powerful difference between having school be the place where we learn to work and the school where we learn to live. Right now, again, in public education, the language you hear over and over and over again is competitiveness for the workforce. We need a 21st century workforce. Bill Gates is spending billions of dollars on the 21st century workforce. And to me, that's shooting far too low. To me, what we should all be doing, regardless of where we teach, regardless of who we teach, is helping our students become 21st century citizens. Because if you shoot for workforce, you're shooting too low. But if you shoot for citizens, we'll get the workforce. We need the cubicles, not that hard. But we need scholars. We need activists. We need parents. We need neighbors. We need voters. We need philanthropists. We need citizens. And schools have got to help kids get there. By the way, this matters to all of us. Right now, again, there is a movement in this country to use technology in a way that is horrifying to me, as someone who loves the tools. Right now, for the children who are born to the least, to the children who are born to some of the most grave situations of socioeconomic poverty, they're using technology to train them, not educate them. They're putting them in computers and saying, we talked earlier about Khan Academy. Do you want your child taught in a series of lectures, staring at a computer? Or do you want that caring adult working with them? Do you want them using the tools to create or merely be trained? How we teach those who have least in our society is every bit as important as those who were born to privilege. This matters to all of us across the entire spectrum. The problem is school was designed for this. The most powerful influences on school design in America was the factory and the prison. Think of your average high school with its square hallways, with all of the cells that the children go into, only to be released for very short amounts of activity and then back into their cells as they move from class to class to class to class. Trung Lee, a wonderful school designer in Chicago, says that 27% of school real estate is in use less than 4% of the day. That's the hallway. We move them through, we traffic them through so that way they can get the least amount of trouble humanly possible and interact only in specific and very, very defined ways. How does that represent the richness of the childhood experience? So what are we going to do? The first thing we've got to do is dream bigger. If the most that we can imagine that these tools can do is create the brand new film strip or a better way to test, then the failure of our imagination is beyond great. These tools should allow kids to create, to research, to connect, to make meaning in ways we can only dream about. These tools must allow them to harness the richness of the human experience across the globe. Let us use these tools to unlock their minds, not to tell them everything they must learn. So what does that look like? The first thing we got to do is care. And again, this comes deeply within the Jewish tradition. But to me, when I go out and I speak to educators, I always ask them, what do you teach? And everybody raises their hand. I say, I teach math, I teach English, I teach science, I teach history. And that's right. Let us always say, let everyone here who interacts with young people know this. We teach children. The difference between the statement of I teach physics and I teach kids physics is the ball game. That's where the win is. I've spent the day away from my school today to come here, but I've spent it connected, making sure my kids got what they needed all day long. The difference between caring about a child and caring for a child is the difference. The next thing we have to understand is it's about inquiry. We have to ask the questions we do not know the answer to. We have to know that if the Socratic method saying, I've got this question, who knows all the answers, is not the purpose anymore. The amazing things we heard the kids doing today, creating philanthropic websites, recreating their world, could not have been done if a teacher said to them, somebody guessed my answer. But rather they were given open-ended inquiry and allowed to create. Seek out those answers. And complexity is good. That's true for adults as well as children. Anytime you hear something as a facile, easy answer, chances are it is. We have to approach this idea of asking these questions and seeking out these answers with a profound humility, knowing all that we do not know. Once we find some answers, we got to build real stuff. Kids should build things that matter. At SLA, our kids have built flow process biodiesel generators that they are actually patenting and giving away to anyone who will use it for nonprofit use. They built a solar thermal water heater that Engineers Without Borders took and installed in a hospital for amputee victims in Sierra Leone. They have written plays that have been performed by real actors. They have created movies. They have interacted with politicians. Today, a group of 40 of them were in D.C. helping to launch the Why Tuesday event, which is an act being put in front of Congress to try and move election day from a Tuesday to a Saturday to increase participation. Kids can do real stuff that matters. And once they do, they got to share it. This is a photo this blows me away. In our 10th grade humanities classes, our kids work with the Liechtenstein Dance Company to create geographically specific dance. They go all over Center City, Philadelphia, find places that inspire them, and then create a narrative that they tell through dance for their world. 16-year-old boys getting up in front of their community and doing this. It's amazing to me that the courage that they show, the power that they have when they share their ideas with the world, not just online, but sometimes in real time too. When kids do that, when they are dared to do this, I believe that children can change the world. I really do. It was said earlier that, again, the day we stop treating high school and childhood as preparation for real life, but rather honor the rich and powerful lives that they lead now is the day that we actually move towards creating a just and fair society. One that harnesses the resources of all of its members. And when we do that, we have to ask ourselves a question. Why in this age of Google? Why in this age where information is available 24/7, 365. Why do we still need school? Why do children even have to go to school? What I will tell you is there's one thing left that the adults have to teach. It's probably the most important thing we've always taught. We teach wisdom. Thank you very much.